I ignored my neighbor for 4 months. Then she showed up at my door one night and... The first time my neighbor knocked on my door after 4 months of silence, it was almost midnight, and she was crying so hard she could barely stand. I remember staring at her through the peephole, wondering why the woman I had spent months deliberately avoiding was standing outside my apartment in the middle of the night. Then she whispered my name through the door, and the next sentence made my entire body go cold. Please. I don't know who else to ask. 4 months earlier, I had made a decision that seemed simple. I would stop talking to her. No explanations. No awkward conversations. No friendly smiles across the hallway. Nothing. I convinced myself I was protecting my peace, but the truth was uglier. I was running away from feelings I didn't know how to handle. My name is Daniel, and at 34, I had become very good at pretending I didn't need anyone. After losing my father and then watching my long-term relationship collapse within the same year, I had turned my small apartment into something resembling a fortress. I worked long hours, came home late, ate dinner alone, and spent my weekends pretending I enjoyed the silence. My friends called it independence. I knew it was loneliness. Then Emily moved into the apartment next door. She was different from everyone else in the building. She smiled at strangers. She carried groceries for elderly tenants. She watered the dying plant in the lobby even though nobody had asked her to. Somehow, she always seemed to notice when someone was having a difficult day. At first, I tried to avoid her. But Emily was impossible to ignore. We would cross paths in the hallway, and she would greet me with the same warm smile every time. Sometimes she would leave a small container of homemade food outside my door because she had cooked too much. Once, when I came home soaked after getting caught in a storm, I found a clean towel hanging from my doorknob with a handwritten note telling me not to catch a cold. I never asked how she knew I had forgotten my umbrella. She simply noticed. And that frightened me more than I wanted to admit. If you believe that kindness can change someone's life, and that people sometimes deserve a second chance even when they don't know how to ask for one, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose heart might need a story like this today. For a while, Emily and I became friends without either of us officially admitting it. We drank coffee in the hallway. We talked about work. She told me about her mother, who lived several hours away, and I told her almost nothing about myself. Yet somehow she knew when I was having a bad day. Then one evening, everything changed. I had come home from work exhausted and angry. My manager had blamed me for a mistake that wasn't mine, and I was already carrying enough bitterness to fill the entire building. Emily was standing outside her door holding 2 cups of coffee. She offered me one. I looked at it. Then I looked at her. And instead of accepting it, I told her I didn't need her pity. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Her smile disappeared. She quietly lowered the cup. I expected her to argue, but she didn't. She simply nodded and went inside. The next morning, I found the untouched coffee sitting outside my door. That was the last time I saw her smile at me. For the next 4 months, I became the person who looked away first. If Emily entered the elevator, I took the stairs. If I heard her coming down the hallway, I waited inside my apartment. If she said hello, I pretended I hadn't heard. It was cruel. I knew it. But pride can make cruelty feel like self-protection. Weeks passed. Then months. I heard pieces of her life through the thin apartment walls. Sometimes I heard her laughing on the phone. Sometimes I heard her moving furniture. Once, late at night, I heard her crying. That night, I stood outside my door for several minutes. I almost knocked. But I didn't. I told myself it wasn't my business. 4 months passed. Then came the storm. It had been raining for hours that night. The streets were nearly empty, and thunder shook the windows of my apartment. I was sitting on my couch watching the clock move toward midnight when I heard 3 soft knocks. I froze. Nobody visited me that late. 3 more knocks followed. I walked toward the door and looked through the peephole. Emily. She was standing in the hallway wearing a thin jacket, her hair soaked from the rain. Her face was pale, and she kept wiping tears from her cheeks. My first instinct was to turn away. But something in her expression stopped me. I opened the door. She looked at me for several seconds without speaking. Then she whispered that she needed my help. I stepped aside and let her in. She stood near the doorway, shivering. I gave her a towel and told her to sit down. She kept looking toward the floor as if she was trying to find the courage to say something. Finally, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It was a hospital document. My heart sank. Her mother had been admitted to the hospital that afternoon. The doctors had discovered that her condition was much worse than Emily had realized. She needed to travel immediately, but there was a problem. Emily had been working 2 jobs to help cover her mother's expenses, and she had almost nothing left. She wasn't asking me for money. That surprised me. She was asking if I could drive her to the bus station before dawn. She had already missed the last bus. I stared at her. 4 months of silence. 4 months of pretending she didn't matter. And now she was standing in front of me because she had nobody else she trusted. I felt ashamed. But the real shock came when she quietly admitted why she had come to me. She said she remembered something I had told her months earlier, before I started ignoring her. During one of our coffee conversations, I had mentioned that my father used to say you should always leave one light on for people who might need to come home. Emily said she never forgot those words. She said that even when I stopped speaking to her, she still believed there was a light on somewhere inside me. I couldn't look at her. Because she was right. I had been angry at the world, angry at myself, and angry at anyone who tried to get close enough to see the damage. But Emily had never stopped being kind. Even when I didn't deserve it. I drove her to the bus station through streets shining under the rain. Neither of us spoke much. The silence between us was different now. It wasn't cold. It was heavy. At the station, she reached for the door handle. Before getting out, she looked at me and thanked me. Then she apologized for coming. That broke something inside me. I told her she never needed to apologize for asking for help. She stared at me with tears in her eyes. Then she said something I would remember for the rest of my life. She told me that sometimes the people who seem strongest are actually the ones most afraid of being abandoned. Then she stepped out of the car. I watched her disappear into the station. For the first time in 4 months, I didn't drive away immediately. I sat there for nearly 20 minutes, thinking about every time she had tried to be my friend and every time I had pushed her away. The next morning, I received a message. Her mother had made it through the night. It wasn't a miracle. The doctors still had a difficult road ahead of them. But she was alive. And Emily was staying with her. For the next several weeks, we communicated occasionally. She sent me updates. I checked on her apartment. I collected her mail. I watered her plants. It felt strange caring about someone again. But it also felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. Then, one afternoon, I received another message. Her mother had passed away. I stared at the screen for a long time. There are some sentences you read and immediately realize that nothing you say afterward will ever be enough. I drove to the hospital. Emily was sitting alone in a waiting room chair, staring at the floor. When she saw me, she didn't say anything. She simply stood up and hugged me. It was the first time we had ever hugged. And I could feel her entire body trembling. I held her without trying to fix anything. Because sometimes love isn't about finding the perfect words. Sometimes it is simply refusing to leave. After the funeral, Emily came back to the apartment building. She was quieter. The brightness in her eyes was gone. I began leaving coffee outside her door every morning. Not because she asked. Because I remembered. One morning, she opened her door while I was walking away. She looked at the coffee, then at me. And for the first time in months, she smiled. It wasn't the same smile as before. It was smaller. Sadder. But real. Months later, Emily told me that the night she came to my door, she had been terrified. Not just because of her mother's illness. She was terrified that I would open the door and tell her to leave. She said that if I had done that, she probably would never have trusted anyone enough to ask for help again. I told her the truth. I said I had almost turned away. She smiled and told me she knew. Because she had seen me through the peephole before I opened the door. That confession embarrassed me. But it also reminded me how close we had come to missing each other completely. Life doesn't always give us dramatic second chances. Sometimes it gives us a quiet knock at midnight. Sometimes it gives us a person standing outside a door, afraid to ask for help. And sometimes the greatest mistake we make is believing that shutting people out will protect our hearts. A year after that stormy night, Emily and I were sitting on the steps outside our apartment building. She had planted flowers along the entrance, and I had finally started helping her. We weren't the same people anymore. She had learned that grief could change you without destroying you. I had learned that loneliness wasn't strength. And together, we had learned something neither of us expected: sometimes the people who enter your life quietly become the reason you find your way back to it. Emily eventually moved into a small house across town. Before she left, she handed me a key. Not to her house. To the little mailbox beside her front door. She told me it was for emergencies, but we both knew it meant something more. It meant trust. It meant friendship. It meant that the door I had once been so determined to keep closed was finally open. And every night after she moved away, I kept one light on near my front window. Not because I expected her to knock again. But because I finally understood what my father had meant. You leave a light on because someone, somewhere, might be searching for a place where they still belong. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who may be going through a difficult time, and subscribe for more stories about kindness, healing, and second chances. Sometimes a few minutes of your attention can help a message reach someone who desperately needs it. And before you go, leave a comment saying, "I'll leave the light on." Let that be your promise that when someone you care about is struggling, you won't always wait for them to ask twice. Because we never truly know what someone is carrying behind a closed door. And sometimes, the person we keep ignoring isn't asking us to save them. They're simply asking us not to disappear.